Hello everyone, today we're going to learn the second class on GCSE economics in Unit 1. And this is about economic free goods, factors of production and factor mobility. So let's see where we're at and hopefully we'll get you to ace these GCSE exams. So what we're going to learn today, it's all on here. So firstly, we need to categorize types of goods. Economic goods are traditionally scarce and they can be allocated through different methods in society. So look at a mobile phone on there, very scarce. Free goods are goods which are all over the world and they are not scarce and easily accessible. Look at that rock. There's rocks everywhere. I know that some rocks might actually be valuable. They might have contents inside them that have value and they will be considered scarce goods. But your standard, everyday, in the forest rock, normal. So I want you to pause this video, have a look at all these different groups of items and see if you can allocate them into the correct spots of economic goods and free goods. All right, so here is how we have allocated them. Some of my students do contest me on this, particularly oxygen. One day they believe it's going to become an economic good. And actually, when you climb a mountain, you buy oxygen, right? Concentrated oxygen. So maybe one day it will become even more of an economic good rather than a free good like it is mostly today. Mosquitoes as well. One of them asked me, what about mosquito burgers in Africa? Good point. In Africa, it has been seen where they get a pan, put it all over the mosquitoes, collect them up, turn them into a burger. Then it becomes an economic good. High in protein. That's what I've heard. Moving on. Now we're going to look at the 4 factors of production. Very, very important details here in economics. The factors of production basically show everything we use to produce goods and services. And we use these definitions all the time, and it's something you need to get to grips with for the exam. First one is land. Now, you might be confused here because I've got a picture of a fish and I've said land. This is confusing because land is natural resources. So if you have water, underneath that water is land. Or on the bottom of the water is essentially land, right? But this land has natural fish in it, and therefore it's considered land. It has been untouched by humankind. So it's the natural resources on the planet: oil, coal, fish, agricultural products. The next one is labor, as beautifully depicted by the half-shaded coal miner. These men are the backbone of society in the 1950s, or were the backbone of society. It's the human input. What do we put in as humans into the organization? So we have the natural stuff, we have the human input, and what's next? Man-made tools used for production, capital. And as we know in this information age, capital has become massively important. There's loads of examples here. Think about Microsoft Word. It's capital, right? You're using that on your computer right now. Enterprise. And this is the final thing. The person that puts all of these 3 things together, land, labor, and capital, to run a business and take the risks. That is the entrepreneur, the entrepreneurial mindset that allows a person to do this. It's one thing having the mind to do it of an entrepreneur, but it's another thing completely starting your own business. So yeah, they put all of these 3 things together and hopefully create a business. Just pause the video for a second and have a go at linking these 4 items up. Hopefully you've done this, and these are the outcomes you came out with. Right, now we're going to go level 2 on this, okay? Here's a table. Maybe you can copy the image of this table, get it down in a book somewhere. What we're going to do is we're going to watch a video, okay? And when we watch this video, you're going to jot down everything you see in this video you think is land, labor, enterprise, and capital. Okay, so let's get started.
Ah, coffee. There are so many ways to enjoy it. But how is it made? The process starts all the way at the plantation. What we call coffee beans are actually the seeds of trees such as Coffea arabica, the source of around 70% of the world's coffee. Around 30% comes from Coffea canephora, or robusta trees. There's also the less common Liberica and excelsa trees making up a few percent of the world's coffee source. You can't just grow these trees anywhere. Their fruit thrives in higher, cooler areas of the tropics, specifically at temperatures of 64 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The fruits can then ripen slowly, allowing them to develop deeper, richer flavors. Continuous exposure to temperatures of around 86 degrees Fahrenheit can lead to faster ripening, which damages the coffee plants, stunting growth, yellowing leaves, and even leading to diseases like rust. Warmer temperatures also mean more pests. The next step is harvesting the beans. It takes about 3 to 5 years after planting for the trees to start bearing fruit. The fruit, called the coffee cherry, is ripe and ready to be harvested when it turns a bright, deep red. Workers then begin the harvest. This is done by hand in most countries, but Brazil's mostly flat terrain allows them to mechanize the process. Once the fruits are harvested, processing begins. This is when the coffee beans are extracted from the fruit. The traditional method of processing coffee fruit is the dry process, where the cherries are spread out to dry in the sun before the pulp is removed. In the wet process, the pulp is first removed from the coffee cherries. Then the beans are placed in water-filled fermentation tanks to remove any pectins still attached to the beans. When fermentation is complete, the beans are rinsed and then dried. To dry their fruits, larger plantations often opt to use mechanical drying machines in order to offer coffee producers greater precision and control over the quality of their batches. Machines can also help speed up the process, as drying can take up to 4 weeks without the help of machines. The final step of processing coffee is milling, separating the dried-out husks of the fruit or the parchment layer from the bean. This step is mostly done with the help of machines called hullers. They use a combination of air and friction to quickly extract the bean from the dried remains of the fruit. After this stage, the beans may be polished to remove any skin that remains after hulling. There is then a final round of grading and sorting by color, size, and quality. The beans are also examined for any flaws or other imperfections. Once this is done, it's time to roast the beans. This is where the green coffee beans are transformed to give them their distinct, rich, brown color and aroma. Industrial roasting employs the use of a large preheated drum. Coffee is typically roasted at temperatures of between 350 and 500 degrees Fahrenheit. When the beans reach an internal temperature of around 400 degrees Fahrenheit, they begin to turn brown, and the caffeol, a fragrant oil locked inside the beans, begins to emerge. This is why the amount of time the bean is roasted can drastically affect its flavor. Light roasts produce a tangier, sweeter brew. Dark roasts bring out the deeper, bitter flavors of the beans. The penultimate step is grinding the beans. Whether this is done in a factory in a large industrial grinder or at home in your personal one, the basic principle is the same. However, if you intend to do this at home, it's important to note that the size of the coffee grounds can have a significant effect on the overall taste of your brew, depending on the method used to brew the coffee. Too coarse of a grind can lead to your cup tasting sour, acidic, and salty. On the other hand, grinding your coffee too fine can lead to a bitter, bland cup. And now for the last step, brewing your coffee. Regardless of how it's done, whether it's with a fancy espresso machine or a simple pour-over, the basic principle is the same. Water is used to extract flavors from the grounds. Many factors can affect the taste of your cup of coffee at this stage, such as the mineral content of the water used, the bean-to-water ratio, the amount of time the coffee is left to brew, and the temperature of the water. Variations in any one of these can lead to wide differences in the final product, regardless of the quality of the actual bean. It's easy to take this everyday drink and all of the hard work that goes into producing it for granted. So the next time you have a cup of coffee, maybe take a moment to savor the journey it took from bean to cup.
So have a think about what planting is. Planting, we can see the hands, we can see that that's labor, but also they have mechanical aspects to it, That's probably capital as well, because capital is man-made goods used for production, right? Processing. Next is processing. We have the machinery and the tools that do that. Harvesting, that was another part of the process. Designing, think about that. Land, labor, capital, or enterprise. We know that's probably labor, right? We need designers. And milling, we've got our other forms of capital. So here's a list of what the students gave me, and I want you to compare this to yours, okay? So enterprise, you can see that box is very small because that will be the individual business owner, not the accountant, not the lawyer, not the doctor, the person that actually owns and runs the business. One student asked me, can the person that runs the business be part of labor? And the answer is yes, they can work for their own organization. So here is a perfect example of all four components together. We've got the farmer on his tractor. We've got entrepreneurship. He's the business owner. We've got land, showing that he owns the land, and the land originally was natural resource. Now we've got the capital working on the land, which is the tractor, and then him working as the labor in his own firm. He puts all those components together to create a business that produces goods and services. Now, final exercise for you, okay? I want you to look at these and try and put them into different parts on that table that I just showed. Pause the video. Hopefully you got this. Right, moving forward. Factor mobility. Which factors are most mobile? Let's start with land. Do you think we can pick up a piece of land and move it? Pretty darn difficult, isn't it? Land is the least mobile of all these things, okay? Labor, humans. Who is mobile? I know that I'm mobile. I travel across the entire world to teach economics. I've been to loads of countries. But some people, they love their little town. They don't want to move. Doesn't matter what's going on. They want to stay because that's where they're born and bred and that's where they're happy. And I don't blame them. And it's always nice going back to those areas and seeing those people and having a bit of fun and reminiscing about the good times. So labor can be incredibly mobile or not very mobile. Depends on loads of things. If you've got lots of trains in your country, like easy access to airports and planes and cheap transport, you'll be more mobile. If not, you'll be less mobile. China themselves have produced a big train line in Africa, making their labor way more mobile than it ever was before. Capital. Is it mobile? Kind of. Physical stuff can be moved. South Korea moved a lot of their production facilities to China around 10 years ago. A lot of companies moved their production facilities all the way over to Vietnam. For example, leather production. Cheaper resources, cheaper wages lead to higher profits down the line. But it all depends on the shape and size of the capital and the expertise in the area that can utilize it. Finally, enterprise, business. Is an entrepreneur mobile? They should be. Some countries have higher degrees of entrepreneurial qualities than others. It can be more mobile depending on law constraints and stuff. But the idea is generally, if there is money to be made in any country, anywhere in the world, people will find a way. So enterprise is quite mobile. So I got my students to do a little bit of research on what brings China to the table now and what are the 4 factors that have helped that happen. You can pause this video and do some self-research, or you can just chill out and let me show you the answers. Basically, in land, China's got all these natural resources, so many natural resources to produce goods and services, unbelievable. Next, for labor, massive workforce, absolutely huge, taking over the world. What about enterprise? China is highly entrepreneurial, lots of business people, lots of people wanting to create business. Even at New Year, they say, 恭喜发财, which is, congratulations, I hope you get rich, basically. It's all about them monies, them Benjamins. And finally, capital. China has had a lot of FDI, which is foreign direct investment, and has developed a lot of good capital for production. They are moving forward ahead of the world stage. Now, to top this off, let's have an exam question. Identify 2 features of a capital-intensive production process. Capital-intensive. Think about what that means. In an organization, we have high capital or high labor. In this case, we have high capital, okay? Pause the video. Okay, here is the mark scheme, the official mark scheme for this. Processes which rely heavily on capital goods. So basically, the proportion of capital goods is greater than the proportion of people working in the organization. So Does not use much labor, uses more machinery or capital. 2 marks. Pretty chill, right? So this is kind of like the answer that I wrote to make it more clear. Next question, real exam question, and last one at the end of this slide. Identify 2 factors of production involved in mining gold. You got 4 choices: land, labor, enterprise, capital. You state one and state what kind of entity would be used for that. So if we have labor, we might have miners. Land would be gold ore. Capital would be the equipment, and enterprise would be the owner of the business. If you hit any of these are the ways to get the marks. As I said, these are all official exam questions. All right, that's it for the end of today's class. I just hope that you have a good understanding of labor, land, capital, and enterprise, how they operate, their mobility, how to identify them, and will be good for the exam. If you want access to my resources or the complete course, which is all of these PowerPoints, a revision note for each PowerPoint, questions with model answers, and practice papers on top of that, I can provide all of that, the link below. All the best. Have a great day.